Okay, good afternoon. So happy to see so many people here. My name is Nicole Roeder. I am a DBT therapist at Gladstone Psychiatry and Wellness, and this is Getting Through a Crisis the DBT way. We're going to be teaching you a couple of skills here today, and I hope it's very valuable for all of you. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. I'm going to just go through a couple of housekeeping things first before we get started. First of all, please keep your microphones muted like you all have them already anytime that you're not talking. So during the presentation, please keep them muted. You are welcome to have your camera on or off. It's up to you. Just as a reminder, we're being recorded, so if your camera's on, then your face might be on the recording. FYI. And it's up to you if you want to have your camera on or not. One other housekeeping thing, if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to just put those in the chat. And when we get to the Q&A part, we will read the questions out of the chat and answer them. And of course, if you would like to unmute during Q&A and just ask your questions out loud, feel free. But if you have questions come up I should say, if you have questions come up during the presentation, you can just go ahead and put those in the chat. Okay, any questions about the housekeeping before I get started on the presentation? All right, well, let me go ahead and put our slides up. I put my computer on Do Not Disturb, I thought, and I just got disturbed by a phone call. Alrighty. Here we go. Hope that doesn't happen again. That didn't work. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. I think that phone call messed me up here. Okay. Can you all see my slides? Anybody?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay. Now I'm going to try to make this bigger. There we go. All righty. So, can you also see my mouse moving around on the screen?
It's not moving right now, and there are no slides up.
Huh. Is everybody unable to see the slides?
It just blanked out. It
Don't
was
see
up, and
anything.
now it's kind of
Don't see
clear.
anything.
Okay, let me start this sharing over. Maybe I can't do the full screen thing. Okay. I'm gonna start the share over again. Okay, now can you see the slides?
Yes, getting through a crisis the DBT way.
Great, thank you. And can you see my mouse moving around?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you so much. I just want to be able to point to stuff if I need to. Okay, so let's get started. So this, like I said, this is Getting Through a Crisis the DBT way. In DBT, we start everything with mindfulness, and this is no different. So we are going to do a mindfulness exercise right now. So for this exercise, I would like everyone to please get into a mindfulness position. That means sitting comfortably yet alert with your body relaxed. And if you can, your back supported by the back of a chair or something similar. And if you are comfortable, please close your eyes. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, you can just let your eyes go out of focus and sort of like look down the bridge of your nose. The important thing is that you're not looking at the computer screen and your eyes aren't focused on anything visually. So this exercise is called paced breathing. The way that it works is you're going to breathe at a pace. You're going to inhale and exhale while counting to yourself in your mind. And the important thing is that your exhale is longer than your inhale. I'm going to breathe at a 4-6 pace, meaning I'm going to inhale for 4 seconds and exhale for 6 seconds. You can choose any pace that feels comfortable to you as long as the exhale is longer than the inhale. During the exercise, try to notice what your breathing feels like, just what it feels like in your body. And if you notice your attention wandering away from your breathing, from noticing your breathing, simply notice that that's happened, and then draw your attention gently back to your breathing. We're going to be practicing the mindfulness observe skill. That's what this is, okay? So I'm going to set a timer, and we're going to all do some paced breathing, and I will let you know when the time's up. You can begin. Okay, that's time. Would anyone like to share any observations from that exercise? You can share them in the chat or out loud, up to you.
It's always hard to redirect back to what you're supposed to be doing. Your mind wanders into all the tasks that you do.
Yes, yes, that is a very common experience. Mine too. When I practice mindfulness, I noticed myself thinking about what I'm about to say to you all, and I would have to gently, um, draw my attention back to the breathing. Um, Vivian says it was very relaxing. Okay. And did anybody find any feedback on my instructions for that mindfulness exercise? Okay. All right. Oh, that one. Like the 4-6 pace. Yeah, I like that too. It's the most comfortable for me. Some people do it for longer. I have a hard time, like I have a lot of colleagues who do a 6-8 pace or a 5-7 pace. It's hard for me to exhale for that long. So I do the 4-6. Okay, so that was practicing the mindfulness observe skill, and we are going to be talking a little bit more about pace breathing in a few minutes. Okay, so who are we? Like I said, I'm a therapist at Gladstone Psychiatry and Wellness in the DBT program. We are a comprehensive DBT program that offers full fidelity to the model of DBT developed by Dr. Marshall Linehan, who was the creator of DBT therapy. And we are also the first Maryland program to be certified by the DBT Linehan Board of Certification. That means that, so Marshall Linehan has this board, and they review programs who request it to determine whether or not we're doing DBT the way that Dr. Linehan intended, the way that's backed by science. And if they do determine that you're doing it in the evidence-based way developed by Dr. Linehan, then they give you this program certification, which we have. We do DBT for adults and adolescents ages 14 and up. Our program includes individual therapy, group skills training, and 24-hour phone coaching. It also includes the fourth mode of DBT is the therapist consultation team. I didn't write it down there because the clients don't participate in the consultation team, and it's still considered a part of doing DBT. And the adolescent program also includes family therapy and parent coaching. The goals for today, what we are intending to teach today, we're hoping that you will get out of this webinar, is to learn what a crisis is and how to recognize it, how to recognize when you're in crisis, or maybe when a crisis is bubbling up. We're also hoping that you will learn, planning to teach you a DBT skill that helps reduce intense emotions quickly so that you can get through the crisis without making things worse. And also, we are going to learn how to prepare for sticky situations so that you can prevent a crisis before it starts. So a lot of times we have things coming up that we know are going to be difficult for us. If you're a student, maybe you have an exam coming up, maybe you're getting ready to have a conversation with a person who frequently causes you to feel stressed out when you talk to that person, or what have you. Lots of sticky situations can be happening. So we're going to learn how to prepare for those when we know they're coming so that you can prevent a crisis before it starts. So two sets of skills. One is how to get through a crisis once it's already started, and another is how to prepare in advance, if possible, so that you can hopefully prevent that crisis from starting. Okay, so what is a crisis? By definition, a crisis is temporary. It is a temporary, highly stressful situation that causes intense emotional pain and potentially leads to harmful behaviors. That's why they're so important for us to focus on in DBT. We have a lot of clients who come in saying, like, these things happen and they feel horrible, and my emotions get completely out of control, and I don't know what else to do. And I end up doing something that I regret later because it caused me harm, or it caused somebody harm, or it made the situation worse. A crisis is also a state where individuals usually feel overwhelmed and they struggle to cope, and this can lead to ineffective decisions and actions. So that is the DBT definition of a crisis. So let me explain how people get into crisis mode. This is a graph that I use to try to explain the biosocial theory in DBT. The biosocial theory is what DBT is based on. It's how we understand emotional dysregulation in DBT. So this is why I wanted you to be able to see my mouse moving around. So I hope you guys can all see this. So this is a graph. And imagine that going from left to right on the graph is time getting longer. And going from bottom to top is emotion getting more intense. Once the emotion has gotten intense enough to be above this black line here, then the person is what I call, they're in the red zone. We also call it emotion mind in DBT. So the red zone is a place where your emotions are completely in control, and the logical part of your brain is basically turned off. It's inaccessible for that moment. So you guys might know already that your brain has different parts and each part performs different functions. The part of your brain that's in charge of your emotions is called your amygdala, and it's kind of deep in the center of your brain inside, in the middle. The part of your brain that's in charge of logic and reasoning is in your prefrontal cortex, which is up here. Normally, those parts of your brain can communicate with each other through a third part of your brain. I'm not going to go into all that right now. And it suffice it to say that those two parts of your brain usually can both work at the same time. Not when you're in the red zone. When you're in the red zone, your amygdala is running the show along with your brainstem, which allows you to continue breathing and talking and things like that. So when you're way up here, you're not able to think rationally, and neither is anybody else. If somebody else is in the red zone, they are also not able to think rationally for the moment, not ever, just for the moment while they're in that state of mind. And so they're also not able to do things like tell time. They're not able to rationalize. You think about consequences, like if I do this, then that thing will happen. They're really just ruled by emotion. So the average person has an emotional baseline that's down here at this blue line. And so they're going along and something happens to cause an emotional response, like say somebody cuts you off in traffic, or you text your friend and they don't text you back for a while, and you're starting to get worried. So you have an emotional reaction and your emotions come up some, and then they come back down and you go back to baseline and go on with your day. People who we see in DBT therapy, most of the people we work with have an emotional baseline that's more like here. And they're going along and something happens to cause an emotional response. And it could be the exact same thing that happened to this person. And because their emotional baseline started here, they're already up in the red zone. And not only that, but they have a tendency to stay up here for a long time. It could be hours or even days before they come back to their baseline. So we call this a high emotional baseline. We call this high reactivity, and we call this slow return to baseline. So the thing is that this person's emotional baseline probably didn't start way up here when they were born. It may have been never as low as this person's, and it probably wasn't this high when they were first born. It was probably somewhere in the middle here, right? So over time, it inches up higher and higher and higher until it gets to where it is today. And the thing that causes that is persistent, frequent, chronic emotional invalidation. Emotional invalidation means that you're expressing an emotion and the people around you are communicating to you that your emotion doesn't make sense in some way. So saying things like, "What is wrong with you? Calm down. It's not that big of a deal. You're way overreacting. Why are you freaking out?" Those are all invalidating statements. And when you feel like something is a huge deal and you're reacting like it's a huge deal, and everyone around you is looking at you like, "What is wrong with you?" It's crazy making, right? It feels awful to have that kind of invalidation come at you all the time, like every time you express an emotion. And so people tend to go in one of two directions when they experience that kind of emotional invalidation. Either they think, and this isn't intentional, but it's just kind of what your brain does. Like, well, you didn't get it, how bad this feels when I was simply crying and saying that I feel terrible. So I'm going to have to escalate my behavior to something a lot more intense in order for you to get just how intense this is. So their behavior gets more intense and their emotional expression gets more intense. And then on the other extreme, they might think, wow, everybody seems to think that my emotions are wrong. Maybe my emotions are wrong. So I should just try to not have emotions. And so then they shut down emotionally. And a lot of people kind of hop back and forth between those two extremes. And our job in DBT is to try and help people find the middle path where they can feel their emotions and express them in a moderate way, and deal with that invalidation in some other way. Okay. Okay. And if you have any questions, like I said, put them in the chat and we will answer them when we get to the Q&A. All right. So the first skill I'm going to teach you today is called TIP. And that stands for temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and paired muscle relaxation. And I'm going to get into what each of those components means in just a moment. First, let's talk about when to use TIP skills. So TIP skills are the most helpful when you're stuck in the red zone or an emotion mind, like we were just talking about. You feel a strong urge to do something harmful. It might be an urge to use drugs or alcohol and you're an addict and you're trying to not do that. It might be an urge to self-harm. It might be an urge to drive recklessly. It might be an urge to, punch your boss in the face. Whatever it is, if you're having a strong urge to do something harmful. Number 3, you have to get something done, but you're too overwhelmed. So, maybe you're at work and you just got a text from your significant other that they want to break up with you. What a doozy, right? You got to get your work done. TIP skills can help you get to a regulated place so that you can get that work done and then deal with the emotional impact of that news when you get home or at your lunch break or whenever you're able to. And a fourth time when TIP skills are useful are when you're not processing information effectively. Remember, when you're up in that red zone, your emotions are in charge and your logical brain is turned off. Well, that's not helpful if you really need to be able to understand logical information, right? So if you're not processing information effectively and you need to be, TIP skills can help. Why do we use TIP skills? Well, number 1, TIP changes your body chemistry to reduce arousal. When you're in that red zone, we call that highly emotionally aroused, and it works really fast. Some of the TIP skills, so the TIP is the temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and paired muscle relaxation. So you don't have to do all of those. You do one of those 4 things. And some of them will work like within a minute or 30 seconds even. And some of them might take like 5 minutes. They're all pretty fast though. And number 3, TIP can be as effective as harmful behaviors, at reducing painful emotions. So remember I said we use these if we're having an urge to do something harmful. So the reason people have urges to act on harmful behaviors when they're in crisis mode is because those harmful behaviors will reduce their emotional arousal, and they know that. If you are, feeling intensely sad or intensely angry, intensely scared, and then you use drugs or you drink alcohol, you're going to start numbing those emotions and feel a lot less aroused, feel a lot less pain, emotional pain in that moment. TIP can also help you feel less emotional pain in the same way that those harmful behaviors can. So it's a good way to prevent yourself from acting on those. And it's also easy to do without a lot of thinking. Okay, so I'm explaining lots of facts to you guys right now. When you actually are in a crisis and you need to use the skill, you're not going to need to remember all these explanations that I gave you. You're only going to need to remember how to do it, and how to do it is very simple. Okay, so let's talk about the first part of TIP. First part of TIP is temperature. And it involves changing the temperature of your face with cold water or ice packs while holding your breath. This activates the dive reflex, which is something that all human beings have, in your parasympathetic nervous system. So you have 2 parts of your nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system revs everything up, and your parasympathetic nervous system calms everything down. It's just the way that your body works. So when you use temperature to make your face cold and you hold your breath, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which reduces your physiological and emotional arousal very quickly. I want to add for one word of warning here. If you have a heart condition, please don't do this without talking to your doctor first, because it is very, very powerful and quick, and it changes your heart rate very quickly. Okay. So the way that it works is you get a bowl or maybe a sink full of cold water, and you hold your breath and you put your face in. Make sure that your face is in the water up to, so it's covering your eyes and your temples. And you're going to hold your breath and keep your face under the water for 30 seconds. If you can't hold your breath for 30 seconds, come up and take a breath and put it back in until your face has been in the water for at least 30 seconds. An alternative, if you don't have the ability to use a bowl of water, if you're somewhere where you can't access a bowl of water, or you don't want to be wet in front of people, let's say, you can use an ice pack and put it over your eyes. The important thing is that you close your eyes, you cover your eyes, make your eyes very cold with the ice packs, and hold your breath for 30 seconds, for at least 30 seconds. And like I said, this activates that dive reflex and slows down your heart rate very quickly, which also slows down your emotional arousal and reduces your emotional arousal. I have seen people, lots of different people, go from being in a rage or sobbing uncontrollably to feeling calm in a matter of seconds after using the temperature part of tip. This is, I think, the fastest acting part of the tip skill for lots of people. And it doesn't work for everybody necessarily. I have had people tell me that it doesn't work for them, and that might be the case for you. It does work for many people. If it doesn't work for you, then we've got other options here too. So the next step of tip, or part of tip, is called intense exercise. And this involves doing any kind of intense aerobic exercise for at least 20 minutes. And what this will do is it will reduce anxiety and significantly increase positive emotions. So one of the things about emotions that people often don't understand or think about is that it organizes your body for action. When your body is highly aroused, it's really difficult to not act. So when you're all keyed up, it's hard to not do something. The intense exercise works that action urge out of your body. It gives your body something to do instead of whatever harmful behavior you're having the urge to act on. Paced breathing is what we did at the beginning of this session. So paced breathing is where you practice breathing slowly at a specific pace. You can choose any pace as long as the exhale is longer than the inhale. And this will activate your parasympathetic nervous system and slow your heart rate, which will help you calm down. So a lot of people don't know this. It seems like your heart rate is going steady, like let's say your heart rate is 70 beats per minute. Let's actually say it's 60 beats per minute because that's easier to do the math with. So let's say your heart rate is 60 beats per minute, and it seems like that means that your heart is beating once per second. The reality is that your heart is beating a little bit faster when you are inhaling and a little teeny tiny bit slower when you're exhaling. This is called heart rate variability. So when you inhale, your heart rate speeds up a teeny tiny bit. When you exhale, it slows down a teeny tiny bit. So if you are intentionally inhaling for a short amount of time and exhaling for a longer amount of time, then your heart rate is going to be going like this. And so it's going to be gradually slowing down. One of the great things about paced breathing, one of the things I love about it, is that you can do it without anybody being able to tell that you're doing it. So you could be in a conversation with somebody who is really getting under your skin, and you can be just privately, without anybody knowing, counting your breathing. breathing in for 4 and out for 6. I actually used paced breathing when I was teaching my daughter to drive. I have a 17-year-old daughter who recently got her driver's license, and when I was teaching her to drive, I'd be sitting there in the passenger seat, like, gripping the armrest as tightly as I can, thinking to myself, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. It was pretty scary. And I realized that is not helping either one of us. I really don't want to make my daughter nervous when she's trying to drive us on a road with other cars. So I started paced breathing. She had no idea I was doing it, and it helped me calm down enough that I didn't need to make her nervous with my nervousness. Okay, and then the final part of TIP is called paired muscle relaxation. So you can practice this skill along with paced breathing. The way that it works is while you inhale, you tense up all the muscles in your body. And while you exhale, you relax all the muscles in your body. Okay, so it'd be like inhale and tense, exhale and relax. Okay, and you do that over and over again for a few minutes, just like with the paced breathing. So this also activates your parasympathetic nervous system, and it intensifies the relaxation. So if the paced breathing isn't quite cutting it, you can add in paired muscle relaxation, and that should intensify your relaxation. Okay, those are all the parts of the TIP skill. I'm going to move on to cope ahead, and first I'm just going to check the questions here. Let's see. Okay, does Gladstone offer DBT virtually to people who live outside of Maryland? We do offer virtual therapy, and we, at the moment, you have to be in the state of Maryland in order to participate because of state licensing laws. We do have some therapists who have out-of-state licenses. For example, I'm also licensed in Virginia and Florida, and because you never know what you have to have an individual therapist, and your group therapist also has to be licensed in the state where you're located. It's best if you are able to come to Maryland for your sessions if you live outside of Maryland. Yes, I will send out the slides after the presentation. All the questions so far. Okay. Alrighty, so let's talk about Cope Ahead. Cope Ahead is a skill that we use to plan ahead for difficult situations. So, like I said, you're going to be having a conversation with somebody who is often a difficult person for you to deal with. You know that you have a test coming up, or you have to go somewhere that reminds you of a past trauma, maybe. Lots of situations that you could have coming up in the future where you know that in the past those situations have prompted really intense emotions for you. That's a good time to practice Cope Ahead. So this is the way that it works. First, you describe the situation that's likely to cause distress, and then you decide which skills you're going to use to cope. So let's use the example of, say I'm a college student and my final exams are coming up. So I'm going to describe the situation as tomorrow I have a final exam in pre-calculus. And last time I took an exam, I felt so nervous that my mind went completely blank, and I ended up getting up and walking out of the room, and I failed the exam. I don't want that to happen this time. So I'm going to describe the situation as I have this exam coming up, and I am afraid that I'm going to freeze and from being so anxious and get up and leave the room. So I'm going to decide right now that when I'm in the exam, if I start to feel intense anxiety like that, I'm going to use my paced breathing and paired muscle relaxation skills while sitting there in the chair taking the exam. And I'm going to remind myself that I can wait until I calm down to answer the next question if I need to. That's the skill that I'm going to use. So that's steps 1 and 2. Step 3 is something that a lot of people forget to do, and it's really important. You imagine the situation in your mind and you practice coping effectively in your mind. So after I've made that plan, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to get into a mindfulness position like we did at the beginning of the webinar today. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to imagine myself looking into the exam room. Imagine myself feeling anxious. I'm going to imagine myself having thoughts like, my mind's going to go blank and I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm going to imagine sitting down in the chair, picking up the pencil and feeling even more anxious. And then I'm going to imagine myself doing my paced breathing and paired muscle relaxation. I'm going to imagine the anxiety coming down and myself feeling less anxious. And then I'm going to imagine picking up the pencil and doing the first problem. And I might even imagine myself starting to feel anxious again and using the skill again. The important thing is that you have this practice. Some research has shown that practicing a skill in your mind activates the same neural pathways as actually doing the skill in real life. And so that's why we want to practice this. It makes it more likely that once you get to that exam that you're going to remember what skills to use and hopefully prevent yourself from getting up and walking out and getting a 0 on that exam. And then just as importantly, you're going to practice relaxing after rehearsing. So, just give yourself a little bit of self-soothing. You can do the pace breathing to relax too. That a lot of people find that pretty relaxing, or anything that you find relaxing. Just practice relaxing after rehearsing. Okay. Okay, so we are going to do a couple of practice exercises here, and then I'm going to open the floor for questions. So actually, just one. Is it 1 or 2? Yeah, just one practice exercise. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little vignette. Kevin is a 29-year-old single man with bipolar disorder. He has also been clean and sober from an alcohol addiction for 3 months. In the last 5 years, Kevin has had 12 different jobs. He works very hard at each new job and doesn't understand why he keeps losing them. Last week, he was fired from his most recent job after having a manic episode at work. He feels intense shame about this and has a strong urge to drink. He's managed to fight the urges so far. However, he's supposed to have dinner with his parents tomorrow night, and he's worried about what might happen when they inevitably ask about work. He's worried that he will get very upset and drink. Okay, so the first question here, what can Kevin do to cope ahead for his visit with his parents? If you want, you can type in the chat or you can unmute and share. What do you think Kevin can do to cope ahead? Plan out the entire scenario. Yep. Great answer. Plan out the whole thing. So imagine the kind of things that that his parents usually say, what usually happens when he has dinner with them. Maybe he knows what they're going to have and he can even imagine the food they're going to eat. So another person says, imagine the scenario. Yes. Okay, so he can plan out the entire scenario. He can be sure to rest and use his breathing exercises. Exactly. Good answer. Paired muscle relaxation will be easy to do at the table. True. Yep. And he could even, if he needs to, he could get up from the table, go to the bathroom and do the cold water, or do his paired muscle relaxation in the bathroom if he would prefer it that way, right? Okay, yeah. All right, so a couple of people have suggested particular distress tolerance skills that Kevin can use. If his parents ask him about work, there's the paired muscle relaxation, there's the paced breathing. Any other ideas for which skills he might use while he's there at his parents' house having dinner? Okay, I think I've had people before who I worked with who would get up and excuse themselves and go to the bathroom and do tip with the cold water or with an ice pack. He could even carry one of those insulated lunch boxes with some ice packs in it so that he has them handy. Okay, and then how can Kevin practice the cope ahead plan before the dinner? Oh, I like that. Recall positive affirmations in his mind and breathe. Good suggestion. So he can practice this by, yeah, he could role play with friends. Yes, absolutely. He can do that. Role play with friends. Mhm. Practice tools he plans to use while imagining the scenario. Exactly. Yes. We can, even if you don't have an opportunity to do like a real life rehearsal, you can practice in your mind. Because remember, we were saying that practicing in your mind activates the same neural pathways. Yeah, practice in the mirror is a great tool. I ask people to practice in the mirror all the time. Yep, great ideas. Okay, so he can remind himself that feelings are real but not factual. So yeah, you're getting at one of the other skills that we teach sometimes in DBT, not sometimes, but we do teach in our DBT skills group. It's called check the facts. So sometimes your feelings are always valid, no matter what. Your emotions are valid, and sometimes they don't fit the facts. And we don't know what emotions Kevin's having or if they fit the facts, and it's possible that his emotions don't fit the facts. For sure, his feelings of he's got, I think we mentioned in this scenario that he had some feelings of worthlessness. I could be remembering that wrong. That's for sure not factual, right? Whatever other feelings he has, he can check the facts on those too. Okay, yeah, you guys are really great at this. Okay, so let's open for questions. Does anybody have a question that they'd like to ask? You can type it into the chat or you can unmute and ask it out loud. I'm going to ask Christine if you don't mind monitoring the chat for questions and reading them to me if they come up. Okay. And I think if somebody puts one in just to me, I will look at that.
I have a couple. We have one that says, I have a friend whose daughter is going through a crisis. What info can I share with him that may help?
Okay, that's a really good question. And thank you so much for being here and for doing everything that you can to support your friend. It's you can share this recording. I'm going to send this out afterward and our slides if you would like. If they live in Maryland or they're able to travel to Maryland, you can certainly share our contact information. We'd be happy to see if they would like to do DBT therapy with us. It's tricky because you're kind of like talking about third hand sort of helping. It's your friend's daughter that's in the crisis. And sometimes it's just difficult to I don't know if the friend's daughter wants your help or not, I guess is what I'm saying. I think that the best thing that you can do for your friend is be a validating listening ear. When your friend wants to talk, you can listen and you can validate emotions. The way that you validate emotions is by this is a super simplistic shortcut way of explaining it. And basically it involves recognizing what emotions the person's expressing and then communicating back to them that you think their emotions make sense. So something like, I can tell that this is making you feel really anxious, and I get that. I would feel anxious too if I was going through this situation. I hope that that answers your question. If it doesn't, then give me some more specifics and I'll try my best.
Our next question is, this has been great. I'm interested in doing a DBT training. They are licensed in Maryland and Illinois, based in Illinois. Which training do you recommend?
So behavioral tech has some really fantastic DBT trainings. They have a foundational training, which everybody in the Gladstone DBT program has gone through. I highly recommend it. Behavioral tech is the training company, I guess you call it, that is associated with Marcia Linehan's group.
The next question is there a replay in addition to the slides? So I guess all of your talking points and everything. I know that we have this recorded, if that could be shared.
Yes, absolutely. I will send out the recording and the slides to everyone who gave me an email address afterward.
Then our next question is, what are phrases that can help when talking to a family member so that you do not invalidate them? Like, opposed to calm down, it's not a big deal, those examples.
That is such a fantastic question. Thank you so much for asking that. So yeah, you're absolutely right that calm down and it's not a big deal. Those are invalidating phrases and they tend to make things worse, not better. So a simple way to respond is kind of reflecting back to the person what you hear them saying. Like, it sounds like you're really stressed out about that. It sounds like you're feeling really upset. So noticing what emotions that they're expressing and reflecting it back to them. If the person isn't using emotion words, like they're just like, yelling or crying or something, and they're not using emotion words, so they're not telling you with words how they're feeling, you can guess how they're feeling and read minds is what we call level 3 invalidation, where you notice that they're expressing emotion without words, maybe with their body language or their facial expression. And it's also very important to follow that up with a question to make sure that you're right about what you're guessing. So, wow, it sounds like you're really angry about that. Am I right? Or is that anger that you're expressing? Um, so, expressing to the person that you can understand what emotion that they're expressing. And the second part of validation involves letting the person know that you think what about what they've said makes sense. Sometimes they're saying things that aren't valid. So you don't want to validate something like, I should just kill myself, right? That's not valid. We don't want them to kill themselves. You validate what is valid, which is that person is probably extremely upset if they're saying they should just kill themselves. So whatever emotions they're expressing. Does that answer your question? I hope so.
We have a couple more. Can long-term chronic stress raise an individual's emotional baseline, or is it more typically the result of emotional invalidation?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm not sure. So in DBT, we talk about emotional intensity and emotional dysregulation being a result of a combination of a biology and an invalidating social environment. So there's always a combination. Sometimes the biology has a much bigger role and the invalidating social environment has a smaller role, and sometimes it's reversed and sometimes they might be about equal. Both are usually involved to some degree. And the invalidating social environments, it could be people saying your emotions don't make sense or saying things to that effect, like, what's wrong with you? Why, this isn't a big deal. And it could be that the environment itself the people are the environment, but other things about the environment, not just the people in it, are invalidating your emotions and causing intense emotional distress. Like, I don't know, let's say a first responder who um, keeps on getting called to deadly emergency after deadly emergency, and maybe their environment is kind of saying to them, like, you keep on feeling empathy for people and trying to help, and I'm just throwing another, the universe or whatever is throwing another emergency after you, another deadly emergency at you. I'm trying to think if I can think of other examples of a way you could have chronic stress that I'm not coming up with any other examples. Did the person
Maybe like a high stress work environment.
yeah, a high stress work environment. Maybe you have a really demanding boss. Um, and if you have a really demanding boss who's not happy with your work, no matter what you do, that's pretty invalidating, I would think. Um, yeah, does that answer your question? I'm not sure if I understood the question completely. If you want to ask again or add some more detail, I'd be happy to try and address that.
We have a couple more. What can you say to a family member who consistently invalidates your feelings?
Such a good question. Okay, so first of all, it's really important that you check the facts for yourself. Okay, so if every time I talk, let's say every time I talk to my dad, he rolls his eyes and says, "That's stupid." Right? That feels pretty invalidating to me. I'm going to check the facts for myself so that I can notice for myself that I am not stupid and what I said was not stupid. I might also check the facts with other people who are more supportive to help me understand that what my father is saying to me is not accurate. Um, in terms of what to say, that really depends on what your goal is and what your relationship is with that person. So I want to give you permission to decide what you want your goal is to be with that person. Your goal could be to not have them in your life anymore, if that's what makes the most sense for you. It could also be, to just keep the peace and not have an argument about it, right? Or sometimes, I think often people act as though their goal is to convince the other person to change their mind. Unfortunately, that's often not possible. And it can feel even more invalidating to continue trying to change that person's mind when that's not going to work. So in DBT, we talk about something called the 4 ways of solving a problem. The first way is solve the problem. So if the problem is that a family member frequently invalidates you and that feels awful, solving the problem might be convincing the family member to stop doing that, or it might be cutting off contact with the family member so you don't get that invalidation anymore. Those are both problem solving ideas. The second way to solve a problem is to change the way you feel about the problem. So that would be the checking the facts, right? If my father keeps on telling me I'm stupid and I feel guilt and shame because I'm believing that I'm stupid, checking the facts would help me change the way I feel about that and help me understand that I'm not stupid, my father's wrong, and I can feel differently about this. The third thing to do to solve a problem is to learn to tolerate the problem. So I might use some of those tip skills whenever I'm in a conversation with my father so that I can just get through the conversation and not make anything worse, not like engage in a big argument with him. That's going to make me feel worse. The fourth thing is to stay miserable. And this often happens when we keep trying to solve a problem that's not solvable or trying to solve it in a way that's impossible. So if you keep on trying to convince your family member that what they're saying is invalidating and you've told them this over and over again and they're not changing their behavior and you just keep on trying to convince them, then you are staying miserable. Okay. Okay. We're almost out of time. I'm going to take one more question and then I'm going to talk about our feedback survey.
The other question would be for the temperature intervention, is it okay to recommend trying a bowl of ice water, or is adding ice too much? If the client doesn't want to submerge their face or put anything on their face, is it helpful to have them use an ice pack somewhere else other than the eyes?
It really does work best when your face is cold, but it doesn't have to be water and it doesn't have to be an ice pack. I've had people do this by sitting in the car and blasting the air conditioning in their face. If it happens to be winter, going outside so that your face gets cold. Any way that you can make your face cold, as long as you're holding your breath at the same time, works. I don't think that ice is necessary unless, like, for some reason you can't get cold water out of your tap or something. I don't think ice is necessary, personally. Okay. All righty. Wow. So many really good questions and excellent engagement. I really very much appreciate all of your attention. Thank you so much for being here. We have a survey, a feedback survey that I would love it if you guys could answer. Christina, are you able to put I'm sorry, Christine, are you able to put the link for the survey? Oh, you
Yeah.
did. Okay, thank you. So,
No problem.
Christine put the link for the survey in the chat. And I'm also going to email it out. I would love it if you guys would give us some feedback. If anyone is interested in doing DBT therapy at Gladstone, please let us know. You can email, you all have my email address. You can email me. You can also email dbt@gladstonepsych.com if you would like an application. And that's it.
And the DBT psych email, you would get me.
That's right. Yes. You'll get Christine if you email dbt@Gladstone Psych. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you all.
And like I said, I am going to be sending out the recording and the slides and the feedback survey. All right. Oh, let me take down these slides here. Have a wonderful day. Thanks again.